The CIA dug a tunnel under East Berlin and tapped Soviet phone lines for 2 years, until the KGB walked straight to it, and nobody knows why. The official story is simple. Brilliant American engineers built an engineering marvel, intercepted thousands of Soviet conversations, and won the espionage game. It's the narrative you'll find in most declassified histories, but there's a problem with that version. The tunnel worked perfectly for 20 months. Then on April 21, 1956, the Soviets showed up with cameras and arrested the guards. No tip-off, no warning. They walked directly to the exact spot, 100 feet underground, as if they'd known all along. Let me walk you through the accepted version first, because it's genuinely impressive. In 1953, Allen Dulles, the CIA director, approved Operation Gold. The goal was straightforward: tap into the main Soviet telephone cables buried beneath East Berlin. These cables carried every conversation between Moscow's military command and their occupation forces in Germany. It was intelligence gold, literally. The CIA partnered with British intelligence, specifically MI6, to pull it off. They leased a warehouse in West Berlin's Tempelhof district, right on the border. The tunnel had to run 476 feet from that warehouse under the checkpoint beneath Soviet-controlled territory and down to the cable vault. That's longer than 4 football fields, dug entirely in secret, with Soviet patrols overhead. The engineering was extraordinary. They used a technique called cut and cover, excavate, shore up with timber and steel, then cover it as they went. Workers removed 3,000 tons of dirt without a single collapse. They installed a pressure relief system, ventilation, and a narrow-gauge railway to haul materials. This wasn't a hastily dug hole. This was infrastructure. By 1955, they'd reached the cable vault. They installed taps, sophisticated listening devices that recorded every signal passing through the main Soviet trunk lines. The cables carried military communications, KGB traffic, even personal conversations between Soviet generals. The operation was harvesting roughly 500 telephone conversations per day. For 20 months, nothing went wrong. The Soviets didn't notice. The tunnel didn't collapse. No worker defected. American and British intelligence officers were reading Soviet secrets in real time, transcribing them, shipping them back to London and Washington. By any measure, Operation Gold was a success. Then came April 1956. A Soviet work crew arrived at a specific location in East Berlin and began excavating. Within days, they'd uncovered the tunnel. They didn't search for it. They didn't stumble across it. They dug directly to the entrance shaft, cameras rolling, as if someone had given them coordinates. The CIA's explanation has always been the same. The Soviets found it through routine construction work. They were laying new cables and happened upon our tunnel. Coincidence, bad luck, that's been the official line for 70 years. But the timing doesn't hold. Soviet construction schedules were planned months in advance. The cables they were supposedly laying weren't due for installation for another 6 months, and here's what bothers me most. The Soviets didn't just find the tunnel. They found it and didn't immediately arrest anyone. They let the taps keep running for 3 weeks while they filmed propaganda footage. That's not the behavior of a surprised enemy. That's the behavior of someone who's known all along. So who told them? The real answer emerged decades later in fragments. In 1961, a Soviet KGB officer named Oleg Penkovsky began passing intelligence to the CIA. One of his debriefs mentioned something almost in passing. The tunnel had been compromised from the start. A source inside British intelligence had tipped off Moscow. The source was George Blake, a British intelligence officer born in Rotterdam, fluent in multiple languages, and unbeknownst to MI6, a Soviet spy since 1951. Blake had access to the operational planning of Gold from the beginning. He knew the location, the timeline, the technical specifications. He reported everything to his KGB handler. But here's where it gets stranger. The KGB didn't immediately shut it down. They let the tunnel operate for months after learning about it. Why? Because the Soviets were using it to feed disinformation back through the cables, letting the CIA overhear conversations they wanted them to hear. The tunnel wasn't just compromised, it was weaponized. The CIA intercepted thousands of hours of Soviet communications through that tunnel. Some of it was genuine, but a significant portion, nobody knows how much, was crafted specifically to mislead American intelligence. The Soviets were essentially writing scripts for American ears. This is the part that haunts intelligence historians. For 20 months, American policymakers made decisions based on intelligence they thought was stolen. It wasn't stolen, it was given, and nobody knew. George Blake wasn't caught until 1961, when another defector exposed him. He was convicted and sentenced to 42 years, the longest sentence in British legal history at the time. He escaped from Wormwood Scrubs prison in 1966 and fled to the Soviet Union, where he lived until his death in 2020. The Berlin Tunnel wasn't a failure of engineering, it was a failure of counterintelligence. The CIA had built something technically perfect, but they'd done it in an organization that had been penetrated at the highest levels. The tunnel worked exactly as designed, it just wasn't working for them. What strikes me most is the irony. The CIA spent millions to steal Soviet secrets. The Soviets, through Blake, knew about it before the first shovel hit the ground, and the CIA never fully grasped the scope of the compromise. Even today, there's no consensus on how much of what they heard was real and how much was theater. The tunnel still exists, buried under Berlin. You can visit it if you know where to look. It's become a museum, a monument to the moment when American intelligence realized that sometimes what you steal is exactly what your enemy wants you to find. Subscribe for more Cold War intelligence stories that rewrote history, each one stranger than the last.